Hello YouTube. Happy holidays to everybody. In early April of 2022, we learned that the Russian Space Exploration Agency, Roscosmos, plans to search for life on Jupiter's moons using nuclear-powered space tug in 2020. After years of basically virtual silence, Russian military spacecraft prominent developer suddenly publicly displayed the first pictures of a massive nuclear-powered space transport undergoing assembly at the company's facility in St. Petersburg. The name is KB Arsenal Design Bureau, and it serves as the prime contractor in the project. And it's famous for its Soviet-era nuclear-powered satellites. But what is the nuclear-powered space tug? Well, a number of photos and computer-generated imagery which surfaced on the internet about 2020 and originated from the KB Arsenal. Well, it revealed the apparent latest version and the planned operation of a very large space tug, which is propelled by electric engines and powered by a nuclear source. The project is officially known as Transport and Energy Module, TEM, and well, it's been kind of known to those who watch the Russian space program for a number of years. Well, what I want to tell you about it is that it's an unusual spacecraft, and this concept, it goes back to the space age beginning of. And the concept, it's attempting to kind of marry a nuclear reactor with an electric rocket engine. So the electric propulsion systems heat up and accelerate ionized gas to create a thrust-generating jet, and therefore are alternatively known as ion or as plasma engines. And when measured per unit of spent propellant mass, electric engines are more efficient than traditional liquid or solid propellant rockets, but their thrust is relatively low at any given time, and they require a great deal of electric power to function. Because of this, basically until recently, the practical use of such electric propulsion in spaceflight was mostly limited to orbit adjustment systems aboard satellites or to deep space missions, in which spacecraft could take advantage of low thrust over very long periods of time. So, by the early 21st century, the Russian military apparently became interested in the greater capacity of nuclear reactors to provide electricity, but not only for propulsion systems, but also for other equipment aboard large spacecraft, such as powerful radar antennas for surveillance purposes, or anti-satellite lasers capable of blinding sensors aboard enemy spacecraft. So at the end of 2021, with quite an impressive portfolio of nuclear technology and a large budget, well, assuming no embezzlements and theft, the Russian Ministry of Defense seemingly became the primary backer of the first post-Soviet attempt to build a nuclear-powered generated system for space. This is very interesting. Russia is not going to be the only country looking at that. Well, of course, all the work on this reactor was quite classified, but like I said, in 2020, KB Arsenal released photos showing what appeared to be the assembly of the full-scale TEM vehicle, or maybe its prototype. So, in 2022, we learned that the Zeus nuclear tug, or nuclear-powered tug, can deliver a satellite to Jupiter that will try to find life on that planet, its satellites too. Izvestia newspaper wrote about this with reference to the message of the executive director of Roscosmos for promising programs and science, Alexander Bloshenko. This specialist clarified that it is planned to check the satellites of Jupiter for the presence of so-called biomarkers and conditions potentially suitable for the existence of life. The representative of Roscosmos believes that this would make a revolution in the consciousness of mankind. This would provoke a leap in biochemistry, medicine, pharmacology, and other promising fields of science. Bloshenko said that on the satellite of Jupiter, There are oceans that are covered with ice, steams come out from under it. As the specialist explained, it would be promising to fly through the exhaust of steam, but he added that this requires a separate special satellite, which ZEVS, that nuclear-powered space tug, can also bring as the part of the payload module. Well, in 2020, Roscosmos and Arsenal Design Bureau signed a contract for the development of the nuclear tugboat project Nuclone for deep space flights. The contract value was at that time 4.7 billion rubles. The development should be completed by July of 2024. The device was named ZEVS, and its first mission is planned for 2030. Now, I need to tell you about a very interesting Russian scientist who passed away in 2021, and about his discoveries and ideas. This video will be about his ideas regarding Jupiter and its moons. And if NASA wants to add anything, as I'm sure someone there watches my videos, they certainly can in the comments. But in the future, I will share Professor Radionov's incredible insights and warnings on other subjects. It's just fascinating. Well, so we go back to 2009. A very interesting news item surfaced in Russia. According to the report, the largest project in the history of the cosmonautics or space exploration using spacecraft, it's being prepared and was being prepared in Russia. In 2020 and 2021, a spacecraft of Russian designers would go on a research mission to Jupiter's moon Europa, in order to detect life there. According to the full academic advisor of the Academy of Engineering Sciences of the Russian Federation, Yuri Zaitsev, the flight to the Jupiter system would take 7 years. Scientists explain their interest in the satellite of Jupiter by the fact that under the ice cover of this object there is a salty ocean many kilometers deep. But there is also a more important reason that makes scientists fly to such a celestial distance. Who built those pipes on Europa? This seemingly crazy question has serious reasons behind it. They were put forward in 1998 by Boris Radionov, professor of the Department of Micro and Cosmic Physics of the Moscow State Engineering Physics Institute. At the meeting with the Russian reporter in 2009, the professor showed his letter that he had sent to the director of NASA. Here is its full text. Mr. Director of NASA, I hasten to inform you publicly that the outstanding efforts of NASA specialists in space exploration apparently led to the discovery of the first extraterrestrial civilization. Examining high-quality images of one of Jupiter's moons, Europa, taken by the Galileo interplanetary probe, I discovered that the entire surface of Jupiter's Europa is a multi-layered grid of pipes covered with ice and snow. The general structure of the giant man-made shell of the planet, as well as its individual elements, framed from a solid layer of ice, speak of an unattainable complexity for us Earthlings. The all-planetary universal communication system most resembles the arteries of a living organism the size of a planet. The fact that this organism is alive and now functioning is evidenced by numerous elements of the Europa landscape. Near some of the hot structures, fresh layers of shiny ice are visible, not yet covered with snow, and unbroken by meteorites relentlessly bombarding the surface of the moon. Near the hot lines, many kilometers of narrow furrows on the ice. The details of the landscape are vague, cloudy, perhaps they are enveloped in steam. Therefore, the lines are in effect. Many depressions, crevices, craters are not covered with snow. They often show shiny spherical caps with a diameter of about 100 meters, which sometimes sparkle brightly in the sun, as if their polished surfaces have just been cleared of snow. And nearby there may be the same caps, but covered with snow, dull. In the high magnification images, we see in some places even regular spheres, also about 100 meters in diameter, which cannot be said to be buried in snow at all. They rather resemble balloons that have just landed somewhere in Antarctica, referring Galileo P-485246, 48532 images. Thus, under the ice shield, which saves from meteorites and powerful radiation belts of Jupiter, on its moon, apparently there is a living, active civilization on a planetary scale. Some of the ice and snow-covered pipes of its communication network are most likely transport tunnels. Their diameter, which is inaccessible to direct observation, the resolution of the space probe equipment does not allow, can be estimated by carefully viewing images of some pipes along their entire multi-kilometer length. The ice-free diameter, true, not apparent, is 10 to 20 meters. It is easy to install if you clear the image of the pipes from giant growths of ice and snow using a computer. And here we, Earthlings, were lucky twice. Thanks to the multi-meter ice shells of the pipes, we see them in the pictures, and thanks to the heterogeneousness of the ice cover along the length of the pipes laid on the surface of Europa, we can measure their true thickness. For example, in the left part of the frame P-48227, at extreme magnification, 100-meter tongues of ice hanging from the pipes are clearly visible. They are especially large at the intersection of the horizontal upper pipe laid on the cold surface of the moon with any other from the lower row. The latter obviously shields the heat flows coming from the bowels. Since the communications of the moon are multi-level, multi-layered, with complex interchanges, junctions, and intersections, its relief is extremely complex. Its main elements are communications covered with ridges of ice, with giant ice bridges between parallel pipes, and with holes or dips between them. Due to the local periodicity and symmetry of the laying of pipes of various levels, and consequently as a result of the impact on the ice of heat and gas flows coming from the bowels of the moon, we see numerous perfectly round or the most bizarre shaped dips and holes in the ice, often located periodically in multi-kilometer chains. Garlands of horizontal ice bridges between parallel horizontal pipes and rows of vertical giant icicles. Glacier tongues hanging from pipes running over and over the surface of the moon are also visible. NASA specialists can immediately verify the validity of this picture by reviewing again the remarkable images transmitted by Galileo. Note that the diameter of the Jovian tunnels is close to the diameter of the pipes of our current European terrestrial overpass laid under the waters of the English Channel. Looking at the bright colored pictures of the tunnel in a children's book, my granddaughter said, "Grandfather, how much have these Jovians overtaken from us? If they have so many wonderful tunnels and we have only one on Earth." Let me, Mr. Director of NASA, finish my letter with the phrase of a child who realized both the greatness of the extraterrestrial civilization revealed to him and the need for closer unity of us Earthlings in the face of this cosmic phenomena. Sincerely yours, Boris Radionov, professor of the Department of Micro and Cosmophysics of the Moscow State Engineering Physics Institute. After Boris Radionov solemnly read this letter to the reporter, he reminded the reporter of the discoveries of the Galileo interplanetary probe that reached Jupiter on December 7, 1995. At first, the apparatus surprised astronomers by recording active volcanoes on Io, one of the Jupiter's moons. No one could even imagine that volcanic activity was still preserved on the ice-covered moon. The next discoveries of the probe concerned traces of lava flows on Ganymede and steam emissions of geysers. But when Galileo showed the researchers pictures of Europa, they gasped. It was all covered with real ice, like the Arctic and the Antarctica ice, and they saw water under it. Presumably its temperature should be at least 4 degrees Celsius, and most importantly, to the transparent ice surface, some structures resembling pipes, tunnels, arches, overpasses were clearly visible. They were examined by Professor Radionov. Ignorant people seeing these pictures, aerial photography of America or highways on the Moscow region, he laughed. In fact, the moon of Jupiter is entangled like a network of pipelines. The tunnels then intertwine with each other like pasta in a saucepan, then cut through the surface of the moon as if by a ruler. Structures with a height of 100 to 300 meters stretch along the surface, sometimes for hundreds, even thousands of kilometers. With the help of computer processing, a complex communication systems can be distinguished even under 120-meter growth of snow and ice. The researcher pays special attention to the so-called volcanoes. Their name is not accidentally enclosed in quotation marks. Not red-hot magma escapes from the vents, but ordinary water vapor. However, since gravity on Europa is very small and the atmosphere is very sparse, the vapor molecules rise vertically upwards, perhaps even for several kilometers, and then fall out in the vicinity, forming a smooth, rounded area. It's unclear, Radionov was saying, there are only 9 such craters on Europa, but meteorite depressions which literally dot other moons are invisible here at all. Why? What? Are they being repaired by a certain repair service? The vents themselves, a kind of rounded windows remaining after the eruption, can be used, according to the professor, to observe the space surrounding Europa. Moreover, he is by no means inclined to believe that the notorious green men live in the tunnels of a 10-meter diameter, where heat comes from the bowels of the planet, heated to a temperature of about 6,000 degrees Celsius. This can be, say, intelligent worms of gigantic thickness, or maybe in the pipes, as if in cases, either the roots or the tentacles of a giant creature are placed, of which there are 1 or 2 on the whole planet, the scientists assumed. Remember, for example, the thinking ocean described by Stanislav Lem, because he was the only inhabitant of the entire planet, the thinking ocean. The director of NASA did answer Professor Radionov, but of course very carefully. Basically, that American scientists are not in a hurry to make final conclusions, but Radionov received a large portion of criticism from his colleagues from the National Research Nuclear University, Moscow Engineering Physics Institute, it's the other name for it. It's one of the most recognized technical universities in Russia. It was founded back in 1942 as the Moscow Mechanical Institute of Munitions, but then it was renamed. Take a look from an airplane, or even better from a satellite, at the surface of the Arctic in the spring. Professor Boris Luchkov, Radionov's opponent, quoted NASA employees in the magazine Sky and Telescope. The movement of packed ice floes, their collision with each other, leading to the formation of hummocks, can lead an ignorant observer to think that somewhere there under the ice some huge giant is tossing and turning, waking up after hibernation. But in fact, everything is far from the case. Humanity has already discovered a sentient Venus civilization on the moon. Scientists have discovered ancient ruins on the moon, Mars, Venus. But then these discoveries had to be refuted. Won't it worked out the same way this time? The doubting language belongs to Professor Alexander Galper. Another criticism came from Isamu Matsuyama from the Carnegie Institute in Washington. After studying the strange arc-shaped depressions on the surface of Europa, we came to the conclusion that these are traces of multiple movements of the satellite's rotation axis caused by changes in the thickness of the ice on its surface. The more stable a rotating body is, the further its mass is from the axis of rotation. In the case of Europa, changes in the thickness of its outer shell led to such an imbalance that the axis of rotation was reoriented to a new stable state. Such changes are called true pole displacements, in contrast to imaginary ones, when lithospheric plates move relative to the poles and the axis of rotation itself remains stationary. There is evidence that the true pole movements occurred on Earth, on Mars, and on one of Saturn's moons, Enceladus. Our study adds Europa to this list. It also shows that celestial bodies are more prone to the reorientation than previously thought. However, the study also confirms the existence of liquid water under the ice shell of Europa. And all hope then, well, in the distant 1998, all hope was placed by Radionov and his like-minded optimists on the landing of scientific research apparatuses. Well, that included astronomer Eugene Shoemaker, who discovered a comet that subsequently fell on Jupiter. We will definitely fly to Europa. There is water there, which means it's worth looking for life, he said. It can really be there. The planetary scientist Joseph Byrne from Cornell University echoed him today, and with its own evolution in many ways different from Earth. For a long time, it was believed that at least three conditions were necessary for the existence of life: sunlight, atmosphere, and water. Now, having discovered life on the seabed, where there is no air or sunlight, but a lot of water, the first two conditions should be discarded, since huge mollusks and tube worms on our planet are able to exist in such conditions, feeding on microbes that swarm with warm water around underwater volcanoes. Then why not assume that something similar can exist in Europa? And I want to add to my audience, you have to watch my videos about Mariana Trench and the strange discoveries there by joint work, albeit concealed, of American and Soviet scientists. It's very important. Why life can exist where it should not, and how it belongs to geochemical processes and more. So I think you will like it. But let's get back to Europa. So, according to the latest scientific theories, life on our planet could have originated at the bottom of the oceans. At first, microbes appeared there, adoring the heat or even the heat of underwater volcanoes. Then some of them turned into more complex creatures and eventually into fish, amphibians, which then came to land. Professor Radionov himself was not discouraged in anticipation of the space mission, and even offered to establish a connection with the Europa civilization if it really exists. Europa is only half away from us from the light beam, he explained. So let's send a powerful laser beam to its surface and try to signal by emitting something like Morse code. So to say, we're here, please respond. And if the intelligent beings live there, they must somehow react to our call, if only out of pure curiosity. Well, looks like we might find out after the nuclear-powered Russian space tug Zeus completes its journey to Jupiter. in the not-so-distant future. Decades ago, science fiction offered a hypothetical scenario. What if alien life were thriving in an ocean beneath the icy surface of Jupiter's moon, Europa? The notion pulled Europa out of obscurity and into the limelight, where it has remained, stoking the imaginations of people both within and outside the science community, who fantasize about humans discovering life beyond Earth. That fantasy, however, may be grounded in reality. I am reading you NASA's statements about Europa. I think some of the most recent ones. NASA people know something, as usual, but they don't always talk about what they know. From ground-based telescopes, scientists knew that Europa's surface is mostly water ice, and scientists have found strong evidence that beneath the ice crust is an ocean of liquid water or slushy ice. In 1979, the two Voyager spacecraft passed through the Jovian system, providing the first hints that Europa might contain liquid water. Then ground-based telescopes on Earth, along with the Galileo spacecraft and space telescopes, have increased scientists' confidence for a European ocean. Scientists think Europa's ice shell is 10 to 15 miles or 15 to 25 kilometers thick, floating on an ocean 40 to 100 miles, 60 to 150 kilometers deep. So while Europa is only 1/4 the diameter of Earth, its ocean may contain twice as much water as all of Earth's oceans combined. Europa's vast and unfathomably deep ocean is widely considered the most promising place to look for life beyond Earth. A passing spacecraft might even be able to sample Europa's oceans without landing on the moon's surface, because it is possible that Europa's ocean may be leaking into space. While no plumes were observed while the Galileo spacecraft was in the Jupiter system in the 1990s, more recent observations from telescopes such as the Hubble Space Telescope, as well as a reanalysis of some data from the Galileo spacecraft, have suggested that it is possible that the thin plumes of water are being ejected 100 miles, 160 kilometers, above Europa's surface. In November 2019, an international research team led by NASA announced they had directly detected water vapor for the first time above Europa's surface. The team measured the vapor using a spectrograph at the Keck Observatory in Hawaii that measures the chemical composition of planetary atmospheres through the infrared light they emit or absorb. If the plumes do exist, and if their source is linked to Europa's ocean, then a spacecraft could travel through the plume to sample and analyze it from orbit, and it would essentially be analyzing the moon's ocean. The Cassini spacecraft performed this feat at the Saturn's moon Enceladus, which is known to have an ocean spraying into space. Think about panspermia. I gotta talk about this moon separately in another video, because the information is incredible. And it's coming from that young Russian scientist that I often mention in my videos, who seems to have very cool knowledge. I don't know where it comes from. Anyway, even if Europa isn't ejecting free samples into space, a 2018 study concluded that samples of Europa's ocean could get frozen into the base of the moon's ice shell, where the ice makes contact with the ocean. As the ice shell distorts and flexes from the tidal forces, warmer and less dense ice would rise, carrying the ocean samples to the surface, where a spacecraft could analyze it remotely using infrared and ultraviolet instruments, among others. Scientists could then study the material's composition to determine whether Europa's ocean might be hospitable for some form of life. Europa is named for a woman who in Greek mythology was abducted by the god Zeus, Jupiter in Roman mythology, and Zeus in Russian, the name of the space, that nuclear space tug. Life as we know it seems to have three main requirements: liquid water, the appropriate chemical elements, and an energy source. And I already talked about the scientists who said that on Europa, well, some of the requirements don't have to be. So astrobiologists, scientists who study the origin, evolution, and future of life in the universe, believe Europa has abundant water and the right chemical elements, but an energy source on Europa has been difficult to confirm. On Earth, life forms have been found thriving near subterranean volcanoes, deep sea vents, and other extreme environments. These extremophile life forms give scientists clues how life may be able to survive beneath Europa's ice shell. If we eventually find some form of life at Europa or Mars or Enceladus for that matter, it may look like microbes or maybe something more complex. If it can be demonstrated that life form independently in two places around the same star, it would then be reasonable to suspect that life springs up in the universe fairly easily once the necessary ingredients are present, and that life might be found throughout our galaxy and universe. If life were found at Europa, how might it change your view of the cosmos and our place in it? Asked NASA. Well, Europa orbits Jupiter at about 417,000 miles, 671,000 kilometers from the planet, which itself orbits the Sun at a distance of roughly 500 million miles, 780 million kilometers, or 5.2 astronomical units. 1 astronomical unit is the distance from Earth to the Sun. Light from the Sun takes about 40 minutes to reach Europa. Because of the distance, sunlight is about 25 times fainter at Jupiter and Europa than at Earth. Like our planet, Europa is thought to have an iron core, a rocky mantle, and an ocean of salty water. Unlike Earth, however, Europa's ocean lies below a shell of ice, probably 10 to 15 miles, or 15 to 25 kilometers thick. And I told you about the depth. It's about 60 to 150 kilometers, or 40 to 100 miles. While evidence for an internal ocean is strong, its presence awaits confirmation by a future mission. Let's see what else NASA says. Europa's water-ice surface is crisscrossed by long linear fractures. Based on the small number of observable craters, the surface of this moon appears to be no more than 40 to 90 million years old, which is youthful in geologic terms. The surface of Callisto, another of Jupiter's moons, is estimated to be a few billion years old. Think about that. All along Europa's many fractures and in splotchy patterns across its surface is a reddish-brown material whose composition is not known for certain, but likely contains salts and sulfur compounds that have been mixed with the water, ice, and modified by radiation. This surface composition may hold clues to the moon's potential as habitable world. So NASA's Galileo spacecraft explored the Jupiter system from 1995 to 2003 and made numerous flybys of Europa. Galileo revealed strange pits and domes that suggest Europa's ice layer could be slowly churning or convecting. Cooler, denser ice sinks, while warmer, less dense ice rises due to heat from below. Long linear fractures are often only 1 to 2 kilometers wide, but can extend for thousands of kilometers across Europa's surface. Some of these fractures have built up into ridges hundreds of meters tall, while others appear to have pulled apart into wide bands of multiple parallel fractures. Galileo also found regions called chaos terrain, where broken blocky landscapes were covered in mysterious reddish material. According to NASA, in 2011, scientists studying Galileo data proposed that chaos terrains could be places where the surface collapsed above lens-shaped lakes embedded with ice. Europa has only a tenuous atmosphere of oxygen, but in 2013 NASA announced that researchers using the Hubble Space Telescope found evidence that Europa might be actively venting water into space. Well, you know that, but this would mean that the Moon is geologically active in the present day. If confirmed by follow-up observations, the plumes of water could be studied by future spacecraft, similar to how Cassini sampled the plume of Saturn's moon Enceladus. One of the most important measurements made by the Galileo mission showed how Jupiter's magnetic field was disrupted in the space around Europa. The measurement strongly implied that a special type of magnetic field is being created, inducted within Europa by a deep layer of some electrically conductive fluid beneath the surface. Based on Europa's icy composition, scientists think this most likely material to create this magnetic signature is a global ocean of salty water, and this magnetic field result is still the best evidence we have for the existence of an ocean on Europa. I am sure we'll find out more. Probably after 2030, or maybe even before. I'm sure there'll be other missions, and I'm excited that ZEVS will be on its way, hopefully, to Jupiter and its moons. I have to tell you more about Professor Radionov. Completely different subjects, but great insight. And I will. If you like my research, please support me. You'll find the links in the description to this video. Please subscribe to my channel and please tell others. Thank you.